Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the VIP presentation, the VIP dinner presentation. And it's one of the most effective new marketing strategies you can have. Remember what makes for better, more effective marketing versus less effective marketing? What are some of the common characteristics? Well, we start with target market, and then we start with circle of influence. So we're always going to start with circle of influence. Why? Because we have higher trust. It's easier to find need. So we already know if somebody has a high probability of being a potential chiropractic patient. So we're always going to go from inner to outer circle influence first because of from our existing patients. That's going to be the highest probability. And then you go, well, what type of patients? Well, the best of your patients. So remember Pareto's rule, Pareto's law, that 80% of the results occur from 20% of the action. So what does that mean? It means your referrals, 80% of your referrals are going to come from 20% of your patients. It's not evenly spread out. And a matter of fact, it's way more than that. I call it the 3%, 17%, 80% rule. And that's really what it is. There's always a real smaller number that disproportionately gives much more. Like if you evaluated the revenue of your practice, that's exactly what you'd find out. You'd find out that a real small number of patients generate a disproportionately way larger amount of money, like 3%. And then 17% would give disproportionately more. And then you'd have the 80% that it's kind of like everybody else lower. That's what you'd find out. It's called Pareto principle. It's been around since the 1920s. And it's true of all of these concepts with business. And that's why you want to be aware of it and apply it. So when we talk about where's that, so why is this one of the best? Because it combines the best of the best. That's why. So we're talking about the 3%ers. So you would start with the 3%ers. And I always call the 3%ers the VIP, the very important people. And I always acknowledged them like that in my practice. I go, you're a VIP. You referred 2 or more patients. So how this pans out is 80% are people who have never referred. The 17% are people who have referred 1 new patient. And the 3% are your patients who have referred 2 or more patients. Okay, so that's why you need to keep these lists. That's also why it's so important for you to understand where your new patients are coming from so you can give credit accordingly. So you actually find out who the loyal, and by the way, that's who the loyal people are. The 3%ers are the loyal people. In other words, if you were to sell your practice, the only people that would quit would be the 3%ers. That's it. 97% would stay as long as there wasn't anything weird or unusual. That was it. That's it. So the 3% are the loyal. They go out of their way for you. They'll go more out of their way for you. They like you. They trust you. All that stuff. And you cannot be confused. It is not the people that you get along with in your practice. And I say this all the time. I've had patients come in. You know how some patients come in and you like seeing them, you like talking to them. They're fun to be around, or you got something in common with them, something like that. And they've never referred to anybody. I can't tell you how many times this has happened. Patients that they like me, they're high-fiving me, and hey dog, never referred me 1 patient. And then when you do your stats, there's this person over here that's referred 3 people. And they just come in, they're like a normal patient. You wouldn't have thought anything about them. You certainly wouldn't have thought they referred 3 people. And it turns out they've referred 3 people. And they're not some of your highlights of the day. They come in, it's a normal visit, they go to therapy and leave. And that person is referred in 3 people. So you cannot think that your patients who are, high-fiving you and you get along with are the ones that are, you want to invite. No, you got to go to your statistics. You got to keep statistics. So that's why it's so important when your new patients come in, you find out where they're coming from. in great detail so you can attribute them accordingly. And then remember, you should have 3 lists. You should have first of all, you got all your list of all your patients, but then you should segment them out, and you should segment into your 17% list. That's people who've referred 1, and then 2 or more is your 3%. Because remember, every time you do a marketing event, you're gonna pay more attention to the 3%ers and the 17%ers more so than the 80%ers. That increases the statistics and probability of you getting business. Okay, so what are these characteristics that increase the likelihood? And that's why this is an unbelievably high new patient probability. Well, what are we looking at? Well, number 1, we're looking at circle of influence. It's your patients, number 1. Then we're going to go to which patients. Well, let's start with the 3%ers. Yeah, you can do it you can do the 20%ers if you want, depending on how many 3%ers you have. So you could do that, but you also know you're going to have way more effectiveness with the 3%ers. Okay. So if you just want to go, well, I'm going to do the VIP dinner and we're just going to call the 20%ers, invite the 20%ers who've referred at least 1 or more patients. Fine. That's totally fine. Good to go. Okay. So what we will do is, so now it's not only your existing patient, it's the best of your patients. And then where are we going to go with the best of their patient? We're going to go to their circle of influence, their mother, father, brother, sister, the people they care about. So we're going to have the best of our patients attracting high probability chiropractic patients who they have a direct influence over, spouse. And we always go inner to outer circle of influence. Who's the highest probability you'll always get a new patient from? Your existing patients under the same roof. So that's typically a spouse and a child. That's the highest probability of 2 new patients right there because of what we just said. Trust, confidence, and we know we'll find out very easy if they have a problem or not, a chiropractic problem gateway. Okay. So we're lining up, and then what's the next category that makes it work? Well, that's great if you have high probability patients and then they bring in high probability circle of influence. That's great. Okay. But what if you use the wrong marketing? What if you just used publicity? Well, now you're in trouble. What if you just used advertising? Well, it's better than publicity because remember, of the 3 types of marketing, publicity, advertising, and educational sales, publicity and advertising does not affect need. Does not. It only affects the obstacles of time, money, or trust. That's it. That's why it won't work for people who have chiropractic problems that are not looking for a chiropractor. So if you want to decrease the success of your marketing, use advertising. You'll be limited to only the people who are looking. Our publicity is even worse. So, because remember, publicity only affects trust. Remember, the equation is need equals money times time divided by trust. That's the new patient formula. And out of each of those equations, need is most important, especially if they're not looking for a chiropractor. Now, if they're looking for a chiropractor, we do want to use advertising. But if they have a problem and they're not looking for a chiropractor, you can't use advertising and you can't use publicity because it doesn't affect need. You have to use educational sales. That's the type of marketing you have to use. And the great news about educational sales is it covers all of those topics. It establishes need. It minimizes the obstacles of time and money, affects trust. That's what it does. When you know it and you do it well, that's exactly what it does. So when you take that educational sales, when you know how to do that, and then you put it into the highest probability target market, the best of your patients and their highest circle of influence where the patient knows if they have a problem or not, and there's empathy and sympathy for that person. That's the highest probability, off the charts. This is why This is a off-the-chart new patient system. It takes knowledge and skill, though. You can't hire somebody else to do this. You can't hire advertising to do it. You actually have to know educational sales to do it. Now, the great news is when you do, you become a new patient machine. You create way more new patients than you physically can handle. That's what happens. That's how I was able to open 77 offices in 20 states, is we knew how to get out of the 92% of the population who does not look for a chiropractor. 75% of those people have a chiropractic problem. Well, that's educational sales. That's how I was able to open 77 offices in 20 states. And then we knew how to keep them. We knew patient education based on the science of the 3 phases of healing. And we created way more new patients over and over and over that easily maxed out the doctors. The average chiropractor can see about 180 to 220 patient visits a week, physically, emotionally, week in and week out. The national average is 107. Most chiropractors are underperformers. They don't maximize their capacity. And because they don't maximize, they typically lose about $250,000 a year. That's how much money they lose by not seeing that extra 100 visits a week. 100 visits a week at a $50 per visit is $5,000. $5,000 a week in 52 weeks, 5 times 5 is 25. There's your $250,000 lost from lack of productivity. And you're already in your office. You already have the space, time, equipment, labor. It's already there. So those doctors are actually losing. They're actually losing the highest profitability because the overhead's already being paid. So this is a huge profit. It's not 50% overhead when you get into that money. It's like 3 to 5% overhead. It's like 95% profit. That's why you want to see over 100 visits, not under. Anyway, having said that, so why is this? So this is why it's so good. You're taking the best of your best patients. You're going to the highest people they care about and willing to act on. And then you're applying the best marketing system there is to it. So you've got the best target. Essentially, you're naturally going to end up with the best target market. Then you're going to end up with the best marketing system to convert them. And then you have to have the right message. So you see, there's a lot of things that can go wrong right now. You could have the best of your patients with their circle of influence. You could use the best marketing system and now use the wrong message. Not good. Not good at all. As a matter of fact, you could kill what works so well. So now the message obviously is the gateways. It's solving the gateway problems. We stick with the gateway problems. That's the message. It's pleasure, logic, fear based on the gateway problems, problem solution with a comparison contrast, and then the offer. Well, that's the presentation. Now, that's what's so great about the presentation I created. It's the same presentation that's used for the new patient orientation. It's the same presentation that's used with cold calls. Like if you just want to shoot your practice up, you could do that presentation with cold call and get 7 out of 10 patients that were not even looking for a chiropractor. That's what's so good. So you don't have to learn 20 different systems. You have to learn what works and then take that and apply it into the different vehicles of delivery. That's what's so good about this. So that's why we're not going to spend as much time on the presentation as much as the concepts behind it, how it works, why it works, how you would do it. Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to share with you. That's why, and that's, by the way, that's why the new patient orientation is a new patient machine. It's the same on a lower scale level. It's just all the new patients that come through with biweekly presentation. So they're getting an educational sales presentation, but you're not focusing on the 3 or 7%. Everybody that just comes through and you're going for their circle of influence. That's why it works so well. If you just do it, it's the highest probability of new patients you will get. So new patient orientation, off the charts. Spouse to day 5, off the charts. Kids day, off the charts. All of these are the best. So when you take the highest probability and match it with the most effective marketing, educational sales, and then do the right message. What's the message that they need to hear and want to hear to get them to come in? That when you combine all those, that is the absolute best of marketing right there. And so that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the highest probability patients. And we can even only say that if you only want to say the 3%ers, those are the people that go out of their way for you. So even if you only did the 3%ers, people who've referred 2 or more patients, you've set yourself up to win tremendously right now. And then we essentially invite 2 of their family members or friends who are thinking about chiropractic care or have a condition like back pain, neck pain. We get them to invite them. So we are going to shoot for, and I'll go through it in a little more detail. I'm just sharing you why it's so powerful, why it's such a new patient machine. So you're taking the best of the best, and then you're going for their highest circle of influence they care about that has a problem. They already have a gateway problem. Then you're going to use the absolute best form of marketing, the most effective. You're going to establish need, and you're going to minimize money and time and effect. The trust is already there. You're already way ahead of the game with the trust. So their defenses and resistance are already down and no more receptive to the message. And then you're going to use the right message. You're going to use pleasure, logic, fear with gateways. That's off the charts. I mean, you can't even give that. That's just an unbelievable, it's like the stars aligning for new patients. That's what you got here. Okay, so let's go into some of so hopefully you can see why it's like off the charts new patients